Moscow, early 1920s. Families of Moscow workers are moving into new apartments. The joy on their faces completely genuine. They not only escaped the slums for decent human housing, they truly believed that a society had emerged that cared about the fate of ordinary people. The very first Soviet constitution enshrined the right of every Soviet citizen to housing. Every year, hundreds of thousands of Soviet citizens moved into new apartments provided to them for free by the state. Yet none of these new tenants became the true owners of their homes. Everything in this country belongs solely to the state, and no one could dispose of their housing as they pleased. Finally, during Perestroika, the state gave its citizens the opportunity to privatize their homes. Millions of people who had never owned anything suddenly became property owners. For most of them, a private apartment became their only capital, and housing quickly turned into the most profitable business in the country. It became coveted prize both for a swarm of businessmen and for countless resellers, speculators and outright criminals. A brutal, merciless game began, where every apartment owner got their chance, but not everyone would succeed in using it. July 30, 1993, a random passerby discovers a corpse in a Moscow river. The officers who arrived at the scene after a preliminary examination sent the body for forensic analysis, which determined the death result from a sharp object penetrating the heart. The victim's identity remained unknown. August 23 of the same year, in a wooded area near Minsk Highway, the body of a man with a gunshot wound is found. Documents found on the victim helped establish his identity. The body was sent to the city morgue, where it remains unclaimed. The victim had no relatives. These two discoveries are directly connected to each other and to our story, but for now they are just two entries in the file of unsolved crimes. Two more unclaimed bodies in the morgue, filling up with the corpses of unidentified and lonely people with eerie regularity. 6 months pass, hence March 1994. Two female corpses are found in a sewer well. Local police officer identifies them as a Petukhovы, mother and daughter, who lived nearby.
Алкоголики, обычные алкоголики, вот. Мать уже пропитая алкашка. Нет, они жили в разных квартирах.
A thorough search of their apartments turned up nothing suspicious, though their clothing and belongings suggested they had been taken from their homes straight to the well. The autopsy determined that both women had been strangled. The usual theory, a drunken brawl turned deadly, didn't hold up. Detectives questioned the neighbors. All they learned was that Petukhovы had lived reclusively, associating only with other down-and-out locals. 10 days later, in the same well, another corpse is found, Bulanenkov, an unemployed alcoholic, well known to the local police. He lived on the same highway as Petukhovы and also had no close relatives. Almost all the neighbors said that despite his surf alcoholism, he was a quiet, non-aggressive man, unlikely to have enemies. Investigators kept walking through theories, questioning everyone who lived in the same building as Petukhovы and Bulanenkov. Had they seen any strangers around them lately? For a long time no one remembered anything useful until a conversation with one of Bulanenkov's neighbors provided the first real lead.
Совершенно случайно вот узнала 7 числа в доме правления.
Это вы узнали?
Да.
От кого?
От дома права ей позвонили и сказали, что Буланенков собирается продавать квартиру.
Но звонил не он.
Нет.
The housing office confirmed that a young man had called, asking about Bulanenkov's apartment documents. He claimed he was handling the privatization and sale on the owner's behalf, but never showed up in person. The only plausible theory, the murders were committed to seize the victim's apartments for a sale. The Moscow prosecutor's office set up an operation. Some officers posed as lonely alcoholics, looking to sell their apartments, and went to real estate hotspots. A decoy apartment was prepared with surveillance equipment. They passed. There were plenty of potential buyers, but none raised serious suspicions. At the same time, detectives walked another angle. Many of Moscow's homeless living in train stations and basements had once owned apartments before losing them to fraudsters. Could any of them be survivors of the killer's attack? But even if such people existed, fear of sharing the fate of the Petukhovы and Bulanenkov seemed stronger than their willingness to talk. Then the operatives received a call from the same neighbor who had tipped them off before reported seeing a stranger enter Bulanenkov's apartment. The man detained turned out to be an agent from a real estate firm. He said he'd received the keys from a client, a young man, who'd promised to meet him next day at Belarussky station. To avoid exposing the agent, it was decided to arrest them both together. The suspect was Alexander Vladimirovich Murylov, unemployed, no prior convictions, born in 1971, into the family of a Soviet army officer. He spent most of his childhood and youth in East Germany, where his father had a high position in counterintelligence. After returning to Russia, he finished school, enrolled in medical college, and then served as a medic in a military hospital. After discharge, he tried to enter Moscow State University journalism program, but failed, and instead worked as a freelance reporter for several newspapers. His energy and persistence helped him understand the chaotic changes in Russia. He met people who had already become masters of the new reality, and Murylov, not wanting to fall behind, began searching for his own path. One day, an assignment took him to a Moscow casino. The roulette wheel captivated him, and one night he went all in and lost huge sum of borrowed money. With the debt deadline looming, he remembered something he'd learned while writing about real estate privatization. Acclimatedly, housing privatization laws handed him a trump card, a simple piece of paper, easily obtained from any notary. All he needed was someone to sign it. Murylov carefully scouted places where alcoholics, homeless people, and other marginalized individuals gathered. He frequented liquor stores, befriended regulars, extracted information, then made his move. He would generously treat his future victims, confirm they had no relatives, then offer to buy or exchange their apartments for huge sums. Once they agreed, he had them sign over a power of attorney, giving him full control, including privatization, sale, and even eviction of the former owners. With that document in hand, Murylov usually stopped being polite. Investigators checking the notary's office, where Murylov's documents were processed, made a shocking discovery. Bulanenkov had signed over his apartment 2 days after his death. This leads them to review thousands of the other powers of attorney, and 2 more in Murylov's name surfaced. In July 1993, 2 men, Sidorov and Troshin, had authorized him to sell their apartments. Soon after, both vanished. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Murylov confessed to their murders and that of Vinokurova, who lived with Troshin.
Убил я их на квартире, на их квартире, по адресу проспект 60-летия октября. Затем нанял таксиста, привез его на это место. Машину оставил за углом.
Где вот, покажи руку, где-то.
За этой дачей. Затем вынес сначала деда, отнес его на руках сюда, завернул.
Как фамилию, помнишь?
Трошин Владимир Васильевич. Затем завернул его в одеяло, утопил в колодце. И затем я вынес Винокурову, гражданку, тоже отнес сюда на руках, завернул в одеяло и тоже сбросил в колодец. Затем колодец закрылся, в машину.
But his list of victims didn't end there. Cross-referencing police files, detectives found another case, the murder of Yershov, who had written a complaint to the district prosecutor about Murylov pressuring him to sell his apartment. Yershov grew suspicious when the replacement apartment Murylov offered turned out to be sold by police. Its resident Zhelesov had recently disappeared. A week later, Yershov vanished too. Zhelesov's missing person report was easily to find, and 2 months later, so was the file on the unidentified body pulled from the Moscow River in July 1993. The circle closed. Murylov eventually confessed to 8 murders. Most chillingly, he claimed his crimes served a greater purpose. By killing drunks and degenerates, which most of his victims were, he was acting as Yeltsin sanitation worker, cleaning society of marginal elements. The freed-up housing would go to more deserving people, and the money from the sales would fund socially useful projects, like a private detective agency, preferably in Germany. In 1996, the Moscow City Court sentenced Alexander Murylev to death. However, due to a moratorium on executions, his sentence was commuted to life in prison. He remains incarcerated in the Belый Lebedь maximum security colony. His accomplice, notary Igor Agarkov, who certified the fraudulent documents, received 6 years. Murylev, in his final statement, insisted to journalists that he was innocent, a victim of a judicial error. As of 2024, he is still alive.